This person, married for 8 years with 2 children, 4 to 8. I've always had a small degree of insecurity, but I completely trusted my wife for the first 5+ years of our marriage. For the last 2 years, that complete trust has been replaced with a distant nagging insecurity that I don't know if I can deal with any longer. Hoping to get perspective by sharing. My own insecurity comes from having absolutely no good relationship role models in my life. My parents divorced before I can remember. My sisters have been in and out of marriages. Recently we found out their husbands did horrible things to them that only came out after the fact. Many of my best friends have done horrible things to their husbands, wives, especially recently. I'm not blind to how horrible people can be and often are. These things make it hard for me to deal with my own story below. Sorry for how long it became. One thing to note up front, my wife was married once previously. She let me know early in our relationship that she had cheated on him with a co-worker in the final stage of their marriage before they were divorced. I was happy that she was honest with me before we got married. It never once affected my trust or insecurity in the first 5 years of our marriage. The emotional affair. My wife reconnected with her first boyfriend a couple of years ago on Facebook. He lived a couple of states away and was recently married, so I was totally fine with them reconnecting on Facebook. I wasn't worried in the least. She chatted with him most evening for a while as I did my thing on the compute next to her. Couple weeks later, this guy gets a divorce from his wife and my wife chats with him a bit more often. Completely acceptable Facebook friendship turned into an unacceptable daily, nightly chat fest. I mentioned to my wife that I am no longer okay with her chatting quite so much with this guy, especially since he had just gotten a divorce and was in a vulnerable place. Told her that it was affecting my ability to sleep knowing that she was on the couch chatting with him for hours after bedtime, etc. Wife acknowledged that it was hurting me and said she'd stop. Later found out wife started to hide their conversations and didn't just talk to him on Facebook while I was around. Sleeping on the couch became a lot more normal, etc. After a while I got suspicious and begrudgingly snooped. Found out the frequency of talking actually increased and moved to the in-game chat of a mobile app. Hundreds of messages most days. I let her know that I snooped and we talked again about how I wasn't okay with her chatting with this guy so much, especially with their history and his current situation. Available and broken. Told her I couldn't stop thinking about it and interfering with work. Reiterated that I trusted her but didn't trust him at all, especially knowing guys, and that he was in a vulnerable and unstable place. Few months of this continue. I feel like I need to check up on their secret chatting every few days. I decide to check one night that she is at work. Read through messages and learn that he is planning to visit family in our state. They talk about meeting and she even mentions that she isn't going to tell me because she knows it bothers me. I'm in disbelief by what I've read. I check again a few hours later and they've been chatting constantly. She mentions to him that I had previously read their messages and she asks him how she can hide their conversations. He gives her his phone number and a brief tutorial on how to delete messages and turn off notifications, etc. This is too much for me, starting to hide things deliberately from me and making plans to increase the secrecy. I confront both of them in the same chat and tell her that she better call me if she has any hopes of our marriage working out. She comes home and after a few days we are able to set some guidelines and reconcile. Simple guidelines are that we won't have contact like that with exes from our past without letting the other person know. We also agree that she breaks off communication with him and that we have full disclosure for a while. I can snoop if I'm feeling insecure for a while and that we don't have anything to hide from each other. Things are horrible for me for a few months and then I begin to trust more again. It takes a full year for me to stop being paranoid and I make a New Year's resolution that I won't snoop again. The new year seems to be going great. Disturbing second instance. A few months into the year, my spider sense starts to tingle. I feel like a douche and break my New Year's resolution and begrudgingly snoop again. I find out that my wife stopped in to see an ex-boyfriend at his workplace. She is deleting the messages immediately after they come in or are sent. I'm lucky to have seen what I did. Also, this ex just so happens to be the ex-boyfriend that she cheated on her previous husband with. In my opinion, there couldn't be a worse person to find out that she met and was reconnecting with. Our guideline is obviously being ignored. I read a few emails and they talked about trying to get together for lunch and my wife mentions that she has thought about him every day for the last 9 years, etc. My trust has been rattled again. It's horrible because I had finally almost recovered from the breach of trust from the previous year. I confront her the next day and I'm on the verge of wanting a divorce. We talk about both incidents and after a few days decide we have too much going for us and decide to work on things. She explained that she had just happened to be at the hospital he works and decided to stop in. Admitted that she had hidden things because she was worried about me finding out, etc. Why I'm posting over a year after the last event. I love my wife, but I'm not sure I'll ever be able to trust her fully again. Every now and again I get the urge to check up on her. It pains me to feel that way about my wife. I know it's totally wrong on my part to feel the need to do it and it's a breach of her privacy. It's not fair to me and it's not fair to her. However, I haven't been able to fix myself enough to stop. I would classify our marriage as content. We work fairly well together with our children and really do have a lot going for us. House, finances, retirement, etc. on a personal level. I feel that we are in a semi-happy marriage and somewhat going through the motions. Bedroom life is adequate. We both works. We don't fight really, but we both get butthurt on occasion and won't talk for a couple of days before we make up. Fairly normal stuff. There have been no further incidents that I know of. My issues. I feel like I would be happier divorced more often than not. I love my kids. I love my wife, but we are not in love. I feel like I will never fully trust her. I don't think it's fair that I can't fully trust her. I still occasionally check up on her when I'm feeling especially insecure. She works quite a bit and stays late at work often. In the back of my head, I'm always wondering if something else is going on. She consistently got better at hiding things from me over the past couple of years, and I'm always wondering if she is finally just good enough to not be caught. I fully realize that I can't control another individual and that she could do whatever she wants without me finding out. I'm more worried about finding out in 10 years that she had an affair. All my insecurities, I know. You might think that both the previous instances were minor and she ultimately did nothing wrong, besides the deliberately hiding stuff from me. I actually agree. But in the back of my head, I always wonder how far the emotional affair with her first boyfriend would have gone, especially after they met. Would she have cheated on me with the cheater from her previous marriage? Hard to turn those kinds of thoughts off. Yes, I admit at this point I'm insecure to a degree that I'd hard to deal with. How does one turn those thoughts off? Just accept things as they are and open yourself up to being hurt. Lack of trust is a killer. I don't think it's fair to her that I don't trust her, especially if, when I feel the urge to snoop. I have suggested counseling twice before, both times around one of the trust-breaking incidents. She was never really willing. At this point, I don't think it's something I would really be interested in doing either. The question, without enough trust, is a marriage worth having? Sure, there are a lot of things going for us. I can't help but think we would both be happier separate. She could reconnect with whomever she wished and wouldn't have an insecure husband looking over her shoulder. We could both move on with our lives before we're too old to do so. I could live alone and not bother another with my insecurities. Divorce would suck, but I think we'd get through it easier than many couples. I can't imagine it would be a cutthroat battle that would ruin both of us and the kids. The kids would obviously be better off with both of us in their lives each and every day. But I think we'd co-parent decently afterwards and try to minimize the impact on them. In many ways, I feel like that's what I want. However, if I could only fully trust my wife again, like I did for the first 5 years of our marriage, I just don't think that's ever going to be possible at this point. Again, I'm just hoping someone out there will have some advice or perspective on the situation. Should I stay? Should I go? Stick it out for the kids. Spare my wife from dealing with an insecure husband. Spare myself from being insecure all the time. Let her free to reconnect with anyone. She has been transparent and I have all of my old techniques for checking up on her. I don't believe anything has happened in the past year, unless she has created hidden accounts to hide her communication with others. I haven't found anything. She has plenty of time while at work to do such things if she wanted to. As most of you know, some weeks, months are better than others for those of us dealing with trust issues. We all have our triggers and things that make our spider senses tingle. Most of the year has been decent without me feeling like something is going on. The hardest times is when she works and ends up staying late. I'm sure it happens for legit reasons, but it's definitely a trigger. There are other things that have happened outside of our marriage over the last few months that have also rocked my sense of trust and reminded me just how horrible people can be. Those things are actually probably the catalyst for me reevaluating all of these feelings and whether it's worth it. All of these things weigh heavily on me. People are horrible and I'm losing what few examples of decent relationships I've ever had. And they are few to begin with. With my own history, it makes me feel like I can't cope any longer. Spending my time divorced and focuses on myself and my children seems like a much better alternative. I do love my wife even if we aren't in love. She is a great mother. She works a lot and takes great care of our household. But without trust and my ongoing insecurity, is it worth it? That's the crux of the perspective I seek. I think I already know the answer, but it's good to hear other people confirm what I might already be thinking. The idea of being someone's safe plan B is a horrible thought, but I can't say it's not a very possible reality. All the more reason to move on. Not sure a future marriage would ever be something I would want. How do you learn to trust again? But yes, staying for the other really good qualities isn't enough. Glorified housekeeper and babysitter might not be completely accurate, but when I look at the good things in our marriage, her motherhood, housekeeping and financial stability stand out at the top. All great qualities but mean crap without trust. I think your statement is enlightening and puts the good things in our marriage in a different light. I do love her, but it's definitely not the same kind of love I should have for her. We've had intimacy issues from the start. Her family is devoid of intimacy, and I think she grew up learning that from them. I found early on that my casual intimacy was met with negative feedback, so I learned over the years not to do the things that come natural to me. Negative feedback and no reciprocation have made for a less than intimate marriage. The bonding is good, But that is the only time I feel that we connect on a really intimate level, and I think that is a big problem overall too. Being a guy, I don't think I need tons of intimacy. So I don't think it's been a huge problem, but definitely something that comes up anytime we're fighting. After a year of not being able to get over my trust issues, counseling might be an option to help with that. Honestly though, I'm not sure that's what I want. All the counseling in the world, and I can't imagine ever fully trust her. I'm definitely not interested in snooping more at this point. If that is the answer to moving forward in my marriage, then the answer is divorce at this point. Counseling might be the answer to fixing my insecurity. I've thought about maybe I'll try that for a bit first. Talking it through might make a choice more obvious, or at least open up other options. I have a good friend who was divorced a while back and always gives good advice. I'll talk it through with him. We're all broken to some degree. She was upfront and honest about her past prior to us getting married. That actually seemed to make me trust her more. I want to be with someone that is willing to take responsibility for bad decisions and own up to them. It was also a negative because at the first sign of her that's the only thing I could think about. So, you're 100% correct. I'm broken but learn from my own mistakes too. The history of our marriage shows that she is untrustworthy, and that the whole reason I'm posting. I don't think I can deal with it any longer. If I can't learn to trust over the past year, I don't think there is hope for her moving forward. Breaking up the family doesn't solve all my problems, but it does remove my biggest problem, which is the lack of trust. Will things be easier? No. I've said things are pretty comfortable and we have a lot going for us. Am I willing to continue living without trust, adequate affection, and potentially being seen as her plan B if something better pops up? No. I have GPS and access to most her accounts. It's been over a year since I found anything alarming and almost divorced her. Unless she's continuing to communicate at work, she's probably been on the straight and narrow. It's the fact that I still don't trust that's the problem. I might be broken. No real change in bedroom life. I don't really have complaints here other than it's our main form of real affection. I mentioned something about this in the posts above. Lack of casual affection is a problem we've tried to work on. My wife does seem to seek something we're missing in our marriage from these other guys rather than bringing it up and working on it with me. I think that's the biggest problem. I could probably have fixed anything that wasn't working, but we're way past all of that. I was never even given the opportunity. I don't think I have it in me to detach from the marriage to make it work. Comfortable and semi-happy isn't going to work for me and shouldn't be okay with her either. In the last 2 to 3 months, I've had the few good examples of decent people in my life tarnished in horrible ways. People I thought were good role models turned out to be capable of extremely horrible things. I know we all are capable of horrible things, but that's what makes the good people stand out. They don't give in. I had enough of that when I was growing up and thought I had surrounded myself with better people. When you keep your circle small, even losing a few people is devastating. One of the saddest parts of this is that the only truly good success story I have in my life right now is my wife's parents. They are truly amazing and supportive and have been great role models in my life. I wouldn't even know where to begin trying to find good people to surround myself with at this point, especially when you thought you were a good judge of character to begin with. I can see how my attitude might piss off readers. I'm definitely not trying to excuse what she did or to put all the blame on myself. However, I do believe my wife has tried to for over a year now. With that being the case, my inability to trust her again is the problem preventing us from being able to move along with full I recognize my part in that. Sure, it's ultimately her fault, but I have no evidence that she hasn't stuck to her word for over 12 months now. I'm not even mad at her anymore. I'm way past that. Sure, I don't trust and that pisses me off, but that's what the problem is at this point and what I'm most frustrated with. I guess I feel like I should trust at this point with how the last year went, but I don't. Again, not my fault, but my problem. I think she's really tried to and has done what I asked of her. I know most people are convinced that she's continuing to cheat and has moved on to physical affair, etc. I'm not convinced. I like to give her the benefit of the doubt without evidence. Gullible, possibly, but with me not being caught up with a current emotional and physical affair that I know about, and in a relatively comfortable place overall, I've really tried to focus on why I haven't been able to and rebuild trust, and that's probably why my tone reflects a lot on myself. I've realized I can't control her or make choices for her. So with my current situation, I'm trying to make the best decision for me and my kids. Take control of what I can control. I am now heavily considering divorce. At this point, I think this will be more of a surprise than not to my wife. What is the best way to approach the subject after all this time? It sounds like in most cases, there is a recent incident or catalyst that led to this type of discussion. In my case, it might seem like this is coming out of the blue to her. Any advice on how I should approach it? Things not to say or do. I don't hate her or have any negative feelings towards her at this point. I just don't think I can continue like this. Ultimately, I want to do what's best for my kids without getting screwed. I would also like to make things as painless as possible for both my wife and me. I don't believe we'll fight and argue about the material things. I'm sure split custody will work for us somehow, and I definitely want to be a large part of my kids' life. I just don't want to get screwed when it comes to dividing up assets, splitting up the value of the house, debt, child support, and alimony. I have no problem doing what's fair. I know it's all based on formulas defined mostly by your state, but are there pitfalls I need to be aware of? Things other people wish they had known before progressing. How to prepare for the worst in a spouse that ultimately turns evil. Ways to safeguard yourself in case they do. Also, are there any good resources that I should look into or things that I need to do before I file? I will obviously get a consultation with a lawyer. I have a couple of good references from friend that I obtained when I was considering divorce right after her emotional affair and other incidents. She definitely is obsessed with her past relationships. I think we all have them, but most of us don't seek them out when things aren't going well in our other relationships, especially marriage. I think you're right about that. I have considered talk of divorce as a catalyst for change, but still can't imagine getting my feeling of adequate trust and respect back. We aren't the best communicators to begin with, but it seems like she's more prone to go seeking than to try and bring up and fix issues in our marriage. That's a big problem. I can't fix issues she never brings up. I am not anxious to separate. The hardest part of all this will be adjusting to not seeing my kids daily. I think, with my wife's lack of intimacy and my conditioned lack of intimacy at this point, she has kind of trained me to not be as intimate by not reciprocating in negativity over the years. Reactions to casual intimacy. Touch. That will be hard to unlearn. Getting physical is our primary way of showing real intimacy. My drive is naturally higher, and I do believe she initiates more because she knows it's more of a need for guys than because she really wants to. Definitely a problem for me, especially when it's the most real intimacy we get in a week. I'd almost rather not than feel like it's duty. Definitely an unbearable aspect of our marriage. I refuse to be anyone's plan B after several days of researching this. I've come to the conclusion that she might be staying in the relationship for the kids and convenience at this point. I believe I'm a much better father than I am an amazing husband, especially with my wife being unable to communicate her needs to me. Again, I can't fix what I don't know about. She does have a job she loves and works a couple of days a week. These are the days I wonder most what she might be up to. I think her boundaries, if acceptable, make relationships as skewed if not broken. So, I worry about male coworkers and her ability to set appropriate boundaries from past experience. Over the past several days, my wife has been begging for another chance and promising to finally go to counseling, saying that she hasn't realized until right now, 2.5 years later, with a verbal declaration of D, how much of an issue this is for me. I think I communicated how close to D I was the previous 2 times. We have other more normal issues that I think we could fix with counseling and some work, but the trust is the biggest thing for me. Something is broken inside of me and I'll always have trust issues, especially with her. Here's my question. In your opinions, can trust ever be fully regained? I'd settle for 90%. If the betrayed spouse, me, has a history of holding grudges, tending to see things as blacker and whiter, and having no real solid examples of successful relationships from his childhood. I've already spent 2.5 years trying to deal with trust issues I've developed as a result of her decisions to disregard my feelings and ultimately trying to hide things from me. I don't think, or feel, that I ever could, but it's breaking my heart that she is fighting so hard in the final hour. I second-guess myself that I didn't make my feeling clear enough for her, or that I rug-swept a bit and didn't make her face true accountability for what happened. If it wasn't for the kids, it would probably be an easier decision. I know that I will never 100% trust my wife again, and I refuse to feel like I need to check up on her ever. If that's the only alternative, D is definitely what I want. Should I give her one last chance, or should I follow through with the D? Even if I give her another chance, I have no idea how she could possibly help me with my trust issues at this point. I don't believe it's something within her power to fix. Telling her I wanted a D was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life, and the next couple of days of her sobbing broken heatedly has almost killed me. I can't imagine ever being able to do that to her again in the future. But it could come to that if I give her a second chance. I'm somewhat confused, but leaning towards following through with the D. Another side note, I mentioned I have spent 6 to 8 weeks soul searching after a year of trying to work through trust issues. Last week I had a really good where I was leaning heavily in the opposite direction. I was feeling like things might be worth working on. I then noticed an email from a male coworker that simply read, "Here's my number just in case," with his phone number. A simple enough email with no context at all, but I triggered hard. Her reply, "You should trade your Friday shift for Monday or Wednesday." Both days she was working. It's probably a casual enough email from my wife to a coworker that she enjoys working with. But I really triggered hard, and it made me go in the complete opposite direction, which ultimately led to me asking for the divorce 4 days ago. Stuff like this will always trigger me, and I feel horrible for feeling like I have to check her email ever. That's not the relationship I want to be in. Crappy and circumstantial, but adds a bit more context. I think. Wife finally got home from work and we talked. As hard as it was, I stuck to my decision to go forward with the divorce. It was heartbreaking. The worst part was when she threw the fact that I would have trust issues in any future relationships in my face, as if I hadn't already thought of that. Staying with her and working on existing trust issues, or moving on and working on myself to fix what might be broken, especially when I can't imagine if roles were reversed, I would have ever made similar choices as she did. Doesn't seem fair for her to throw that at me at this point. I'm well aware there have to be trustworthy people out there. I think I'm one. I claim that spouses should be able to tell each other everything, even if the reaction might be painful. She claimed that if she had approached me about wanting to talk to somebody that I would have freaked out. I think I would have been leery but okay with it since she was being open and honest. Either way, I was never given the chance and she chose to make the decision for us and hide it from me altogether. She was actually fed up with her previous marriage and ended up cheating with OM in the final hour. She was also very upfront and honest about that fact to me in the beginning of our relationship, pre-marriage. So, you're correct that I knew she had a history and questionable morals on the subject. But, at the time, I took it as a positive that she was being so open and honest with me about everything at that point. In hindsight, it should have been a bigger red flag for sure. Over our conversations the past few days, since I asked for D, I've kind of been shocked that she really didn't get it until now. It made me second guess whether I had adequately conveyed how much of an issue it was for me. Luckily, I found a 2-page letter I sent her over a year ago that pretty much made it clear how I felt at the time and how bad I thought her actions were. Divorce was clearly on the table at the time, but never asked for. I gave her a copy of it and told her that nothing had really changed over the last year. I was really surprised at how much she seemed to want to try to work on things now. It still hurts to be privy to these details, even in the final hour, but it has really solidified my resolve and really does release me from any doubt that I'm doing the right thing. It's also a bit ironic that I was having a really good day last week before asking for D, thinking we could work on things. Then I casually noticed the email from this OM. Hey, here's my phone number just in case. This guy was the final straw for me and ended our marriage, and she has no idea. Even last night and this morning, she was telling me that this isn't what she wants and was trying to convince me to stay and work on things, all the while keeping this guy warm just in case. It hurts me not to throw this knowledge in her face. I've decided to keep it to myself until we have finalized our divorce. Why make waves now? 4 months later, in the midst of another R with counseling this time. Gave her 2 chances previously. Finally got a VAR and caught her meeting her coworker and flirting before work. When confronted, she confessed to kissing him twice recently. Duck my life. You were all right. Last 4 months were a waste of time and much money. At least I finally have concrete proof. Moving for D as soon as possible. Definitely going to tell the other man's wife, but not until my own divorce is final. I guess he's recently separated, but she still deserves to know. Debating on whether to text him that he's a piece of crap and should be ashamed. Wonder what her work would think. At least I feel like I've tried my best, and I will leave this marriage knowing I tried everything. My kids at least deserve it, I suppose. Counseling was the last thing I would have looked back on and regretted not trying. Today, I've been away packing up all my crap. Also, I'm not leaving the house, just getting this ball rolling fast. As soon as the house sales and divorce are final, I'm ready to roll. Looking forward to being able to focus my time and energy on my kids and myself. This is the same coworker from April. Things seemed off, so I decided to use a VAR. Caught her on the first day, but actually got really lucky. I shopped around for VAR for a while and talked myself into a cheaper model. Turns out it was not voice activated, and the battery ran out before her commute home. I was resigned to try buy an actual VAR and try again, but figured I'd listen to her commute in. I was lucky to have caught a couple minutes of evidence at the end of her commute to work when they talked in the parking garage briefly. The verbiage was only just specific enough to remove all doubt. I feel very lucky in this. Was exhausted, so I was in bed when she got home. More guest room for her. She worked another 12 hours today. She didn't mention anything via text today. Exhausted again today from more packing. Probably won't get a feel for how she's taking it until tomorrow. This morning is the first morning we've been able to communicate. She's actually putting on a brave face, but I can tell she's freaking out. Hopefully she's deep enough in the fog with this guy that she doesn't put up too much of a fight getting things moving. Realtor coming to take pictures of the house soon. Attorney tomorrow. Papers served as soon as possible. Splitting funds as soon as I get the okay from attorney, etc. Working out more than normal, spending quality time with the kids, investing more in work. I have rough moments, but overall I feel better than I have in years. Almost 2 weeks later, since confronting the wife with VAR evidence and tell her it's done, things started moving really quickly. Contacting realtor, meeting with attorney, etc. Well, as of today, our house is under contract, sold in 3 days. The house is 80% packed. We have 2 weeks to be out, and last night, she signed uncontested divorce papers that are fair. Pretty much just child support, and we worked out a split that will allow us to both work full-time. Most crazy week of my life, but the easiest 125 pounds I've ever lost. We both know it's over. so we're focused on being fair and doing what's best for the kids. I'm just relieved I won't have to be with someone I can't trust any longer. It's like a roller coaster that never gets past the initial drop. Finding a place is the last piece, and unfortunately the buyers needed to move in sooner than later, giving us only 3 weeks, 2 left. I'm going out with a realtor tonight to look at 4 possible properties to buy. If nothing works out, I will probably rent for a year while I figure everything out. All I needed was concrete proof that she had broken one of the last guidelines we had set up. My spider sense has been fairly spot on over the last 3.5 years. I felt the need to use a VAR because she knew all the old tricks. I didn't expect to catch anything immediately. What I did catch was her waiting in her car, I assume in the parking garage of her work, for 10+ minutes. Heard another car door close. Then she turns off vehicle. I hear guy's voice explaining that he got held up arguing with his wife and that he needs to plan for it. Then I hear my wife compliment his shirt. Then she asks, "What were you arguing about?" "Your new girlfriend." In all honesty, they could have talked about the weather and I could have told by her voice that it was more than that. Haven't felt that surge of adrenaline in years. My heart was almost beating out of my chest. Felt so angry yet vindicated. I caught you. That was the final straw. Concrete proof the first time the VAR was in her vehicle. I really lucked out. Hard to believe it was only 10 days ago. About a month later. This will be my last update on this thread. I've been in my new house for over a full week now. The judge did sign the waiver of the 90-day waiting period with only a couple days to spare before I closed. I was able to buy the house as a single man. My divorce is final and I'm now finding that I have time to reflect on everything. It's been the most insane roller coaster ride of my life, and we seem to have never left the initial steep drop. My kids are doing as well as can be expected. I'm still on good terms with the ex and we will be good co-parents. She is actually moving to the same city I'm in, so it will be great for the kids. And only a slim chance we'll run into each other at the grocery store. I'm finding that this is the first time that the loneliness has been able to set in, especially when I go almost a week at a time without seeing my kiddos. Even so, I'm so glad I no longer have the stress and weight on my shoulders of worrying about an unfaithful spouse. I'm finding that the thought of dating is both intimidating, scary, and exciting all at once. I think I'm going to take a lot of time before I jump into anything though. I've been hiking more, trail running, and going out with friends on the weekends. I still worry about how to move on and be able to trust another woman. More so wondering if my issues with trust will carry over after being married to an untrustworthy wife for years. Either way, I might start new posts in life after divorce. But I think I'm done coping with the infidelity in my marriage. I'll probably continue to lurk and hopefully be able to help someone else like many of you have been able to help me over the last few years. Here's to the future. Another month later. 2 weeks ago, my ex asked if I could take the kids on my off weekend so she could pick up an extra shift. This puts me 3 weekends in a row, but I figured I'd help out. Something seemed off when she dropped the kids off. Not unlike the feeling I'd get when we were married and she was telling less than the truth. I decide to check up on her story and find out that she wasn't at work after all. I have no idea what she was actually doing and don't think I actually care. I'm just miffed that she lied to me about why she needed me to take the kids. Like her weekend plans are more important than mine, and lying about work is better than just asking if I could take the kids. Is it worth my time to confront her about it? Or just let it slide and not be so cavalier about helping in the future? I'd be happy to help but refuse to be lied to like I was in our marriage. What the duck? Can't she just tell me the truth? I don't think the confrontation would make anything better, except maybe making me feel better about it for 2 seconds. It couldn't possibly make future interactions better. I'll keep it in my pocket in case she ever tries to guilt me into changing my schedule so she can work in the future. I no longer have an influence on who she chooses to date and eventually bring into their lives, until it become a detriment to them. I'm not interested in trying to control her in her new life and realized a long time ago that controlling another adult human being is impossible. I actually hope she does find someone amazing though, for both her and my kids. Trust me though, I'll be prepared to deal with the alternative where it comes to my kids. What I do need to control is how we treat each other moving forward in our co-parenting relationship. That's where the lying seems rude, if nothing else, especially since it was unnecessary. She'll never learn about breaking trust. If she had just asked if I could take the girls because she had plans, I actually probably would have, especially if I had no other plans. I thought we were moving towards that type of co-parenting relationship, where we could help each other out on occasion. Sometime later, I've tried my hand at dating and met a couple of people but came to the conclusion that I needed more time. I assumed my wife would be doing the same, and it didn't really bother me. Today the kids are dropped off and all they can talk about is we met mom's new boyfriend. Then an hour of non-stop filling me in on all the details. His name is dropped and it just so happens to be the guy from my wife's first emotional affair 4 years prior. It all kind of hits like a ton of bricks. If I'm being honest, I'm a tiny bit irked by who it is. That little bit of history was the initial cracks in the foundation of my marriage which ultimately led to our divorce. Now he's being introduced to my kids so early in a new dating relationship. Seems a bit irresponsible on the XW part. I know I don't have control over any of that, and I hope he's a decent guy for my kids to be around. How have you guys learned to cope with this type of situation? The kids. As for the kids, I've listened to them about their experiences with the new boyfriend without showing any negative emotion and not probing for details. Just listening. I want to be supportive for them. It must be really hard for them to wrap their little kid brains around it all, especially so close to the divorce. My feelings, floods of different kind of emotions. The most since the actual divorce. I've just barely gotten to a good place with myself about being on my own and figuring all of that out. This feels like a huge assault on the walls I've built in my new personal foundation. When the following statements come out, it's hard to know how to process. Mom's new boyfriend does this. He's so cool. Well, you're so cool too, Dad. He gives us piggyback rides. He's so strong. I saw Mom kissing her new boyfriends all day, just trying to figure out how to cope with this new development. Losing direct control of the people that come into your kids' lives is hard and scary, especially when you've experienced the crappy stuff as a child or have family or friends that have. Definitely the hardest day since finding out my wife was indeed kissing a co-worker. My youngest daughter, who's 5, hasn't been able to stop talking about Mom's new boyfriend. Every little detail. It's so hard to continue to respond with neutral comments. What the hell? Couldn't she try dating other guys that didn't ruin our marriage? I can only imagine it would be somewhat easier. Over dinner, I brought up our common conversation about feeling okay to talk to me or Mom. If someone makes you feel uncomfortable or touches you inappropriately, or anything at all makes you feel strange, you can talk to me about it, and it's my job to help you out. I definitely made it as generic as always, but wanted it fresh on their minds. On the other hand, it was a near constant barrage on my emotions and post-divorce barriers that I've erected. Just a really hard evening. Half a year later, the first 2 weekends were some of the worst of my life. After that, I look back and I'm happy to have the Band-Aid gone. It still mildly stings whenever the kids mention "here new guy," but not nearly as much. I have dated a couple of cool girls but have yet to introduce anyone to my kids. When I'm with the kids, it's our time. We have a lot of fun. One day, I might meet someone special enough to introduce. My comment. How you guys like the final ending? Although it took OP a while to get out of his problem, but he finally did. Let me know what you think down below. Check out the recent stories, and there will be one more story coming today.